Hey girl, hey.
Hey girl, hey.
How are you?
I'm fabulous. How about you?
Fabulous? Really?
Yes, that
Awesome.
was true. That was not sarcastic,
That
not
was
at
a
the moment.
sincere fab. I too am fab, and I'm pretty psyched to talk about what we're going to talk about today because nothing like starting off with something that might be a little controversial and alienate our listeners.
That's right, because we want to be direct. So I'm Beth Knaus, and that's
I'm Nancy Medoff. Yes, I am. And what are we talking about today, Beth?
today we are talking about imposter syndrome.
More specifically, debunking imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, do you want to start with why this is a hot topic for you, or would you like me to?
Sure. I will talk about it.
Okay.
Um, I actually think that, everybody at some point feels this thing that's been labeled as imposter syndrome. However, it is not a syndrome. In fact, the other day, I read a wonderful statement from Ellie Lane, a coach that I know and a colleague that I respect. And she said, imposter syndrome is not a syndrome. It's only a thought. Don't pay too much attention to it. And I loved seeing that. And I actually praised her on it because it is just a thought. It's a fleeting moment of uncertainty, of insecurity, of maybe not knowing exactly what to do in the moment. But there are certainly ways to get past it. And a syndrome is something you have chronically for life. And so if you're going to call something a syndrome, to me, if you're saying, oh, well, I'd like to do X, Y, and Z, but I have this syndrome. It's like the cop out, it's the scapegoat, it's how you're preventing yourself from moving forward in the way that you say that you would really like to.
Totally agree. The only thing I would add, and I love that quote, is that I would say it's a feeling, right? Thought, feeling, interchangeable in this particular case. When people call it a syndrome, they catastrophize it. You don't have a disease, you don't have a medical condition. It is a feeling, and feelings aren't facts. It's when you allow these feelings to become facts in your head that you derail your opportunity to speak up. The other thing that highly irritates me about imposter syndrome, and we're going to get into fun ways for how to overcome it, is this myth that women are the only ones that experience it. I guarantee you, Beth, anybody listening, if you go home and ask your son, your husband, your friend, whoever, if they ever feel like they didn't earn their seat at the table, or if they ever feel like people are going to find out they don't really know what they're talking about, or if they ever feel like a fraud, every single one of them will say, of course I do, I feel it all the time. The difference is the men don't let it get in their way. That is the difference.
I agree. I agree. And I also think that they are so much more quiet about their emotions, right? Or about what they're feeling, because they're like, hey, my job is to get my job and do my job and to get paid well and to move forward. And not that it's only happening professionally, because we talk about personal stuff too, but I think that they have a really great way of separating those feelings from facts, right? And I talk about this often. We've had discussions about it because, I feel like you and I bring some awesome things to this podcast because you have some corporate background. I do not. I have had kids and you have not. And these are elements that definitely affect your life and how you behave and how you learn, to act certain ways or say certain things. And I also think that being raised by a man was a blessing to me, honestly, because that's who taught me, like, you can have feelings, you can have a hissy fit, you can, break down or whatever, but when you're done, the issue is still there. And so you have to be able to take your feelings, put them over here to the side and say, okay, now I'm going to address this crap. Now, what do I do? How do I get through it? Or am I just going to live with it? Right. Which none of us want to do. Nobody wants to live in that frame of mind. So I think that's the thing that we really want to get across today.
Totally agree. And I remember, I mean, this wasn't until recently. I was having breakfast, and you've heard the story 100 times. I think it's important that our listeners hear it. I was having breakfast with a friend of mine in New York. He is a true New York, outgoing, gregarious. I adore him. We were having breakfast and he was asking me what I do, what I started doing. And I said, oh, I help women feel empowered. I help them gain their confidence. I help them overcome imposter syndrome. And he got this little smirk on his face. And I said, what's up? He goes, men feel it too. And I was blown away. Here's this larger than life, huge job, New Yorker, tough as nails guy saying, I feel uncertain too. I feel like, and he said, I'm walking into a meeting and I'm convinced after this breakfast, I'm walking into this meeting, I'm convinced everybody's going to know that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But you know what? Again, he did it anyway. And he didn't let him stop him. He didn't let it stop him. And that to me is the difference. And that to me is the shame. And that to me is why we're having this podcast, so that we can talk about how to overcome these feelings of uncertainty. Maybe moving forward, that's what you and I can call it. Feelings of uncertainty.
Feelings of uncertainty. I like it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome it?
So for me, I feel like I just really need to notice it. So you said a key word for me, and it's catastrophizing. And at one point I was working with a therapist who I actually disliked, except for the fact that she taught me about this term, catastrophizing. And she was 100% correct. I mean, if something could potentially go down and the world could end or whatever, I'm your girl. I am grace under pressure. I'm prepared for the world to explode. It could be something like a scratch that needs a Band-Aid. And I'm like, I know where the weapons are. And, as soon as she explained it to me, I was like, I do that all the time. And so it's not that I don't get those feelings anymore, although they are mostly subdued, but I now can realize it and be like, okay, nobody just hit the nuclear button. This is not a huge thing. There are ways to deal with it, whatever it is. Try to talk myself off the cliff, do some breathing. Maybe I call a trusted friend who I know is not judgmental or unbiased, right? Because so much of what you do when you handle these things is who's in your circle, right? Who's in your support circle. And to know who to call when, right? Who's gonna, shake you up and give you a smack and say, get over it, put on your big girl panties, or who's gonna talk you off the cliff. And get some support. Because I think sometimes, because there is a shame involved in it, people tend to curl up in the corner with it rather than saying, okay, I need some help.
Totally agree. Can I tell you how I just overcame it like a month ago?
Of course.
So, and this is everybody gets it. I am a public speaker. I have been public speaking since 2014. This is what I do. I thrive on attention, in case you didn't notice, but I thrive on doing these public speaking gigs. So I had a very, very big opportunity. I would call it my whale. It was a fantastic opportunity. And I was beside myself leading up to it, just completely freaked out, because I was catastrophizing it. And by the way, I think I learned that term from a therapist, actually. So what I had to do was, about a week out, I said to myself, okay, practice what you preach. You write blogs about this, you give speeches about this, you are a hypocrite if you cannot get this under control. So I did exactly what you said. The first thing I did was I actually called a client who is a friend, and we were talking anyway, and I brought it up, and she's awesome. She drilled down and she said, why do you think you're feeling this way? And what have you done to prepare? And why is this one different? And she really started asking me a lot of questions that got me to understand why it was so loaded for me. And then I told myself, I swear I was walking around the house saying, feelings are not facts. Feelings are not facts. Get it under control. Get it under control. And then my third tactic that I used was recall. So I recalled all of the times that I have done this exact same session and had people just standing ovations and emailing me and signing up for my newsletter and really just loving what I bring. And I had to go through those 3 steps. And it was not until the night before the speech that it clicked and I was ready and I crushed it. But it was real. It was real. Would I call it a syndrome? Nope. It was a snapshot in time when I felt less confident than usual. That's it.
Yep.
So I was going to ask you, where else do you think that women are letting imposter syndrome hold themselves back?
Well, I just think it's just so easy in every element, right? Like when my kids were little, I was not that person who wanted to be at the sandbox talking about the crafts I had done at home and the cookies I had already baked and the 16 books that I read and my 6-month-old knows the alphabet and all of that stuff, by 10 a.m. at the sandbox.
Mhm.
I just never really fit into that. However, so I do think that that's imposter syndrome. I do think there's this competition. I do think there's this underlying, I'm not making any money directly, so I have to overachieve in this parenting role, or, I don't have any self-confidence because my parents told me I can't do anything my whole life. And so now I have to, I have to be perfect. There's this thing about being perfect, I think, for a lot of people.
Mm. Can we,
Yeah,
yep. Can we talk about that perfection syndrome for a minute?
sure.
I have so many things, so much of what you just said just resonated with me. It is the perfection syndrome. I remember I had a boss, that I might call a syndrome, nah, I wouldn't call it a syndrome. I had a boss many years ago. I was about to get a pretty big promotion. And I said, she knew me very well. And I said, what do you think is going to be my biggest challenge in this role? And I'll never forget it. She said, you need to understand that you are not always going to have the answer, and it is not always going to be perfect. And if you don't produce because it's not perfect, it will derail your entire career. And I was like, wow, like I didn't have that self-awareness at the time. I didn't realize that. I thought I just wanted to do a good job. And she said, no, you won't send it out unless it is buttoned up. And yes, there's value in that. But if it has to be perfect and you don't say what you want to say or produce what you want to produce or present what you want to present because it's not perfect, you're gonna derail your career. So I think so from a corporate perspective, that's how I can relate. And I find it so interesting that you're talking about at the jungle gym and at the Uber moms, right? This is my friends that I have a lot of friends that were like, oh, if I have to deal with one more Uber mom, and we talk about it in the book, and pulling up in the SUV and handing out the oranges and on the conference call, looking great, physically fit. Like, who can do that? Who
Right,
can do that?
right. You might be able to handle it for a while, but at some point, something's going to fall, right? And there's something so not authentic about it, right? Because I don't know about you, but I often find myself in meetings or group situations, and somebody that I look up to or think really has all their crap together will be like, oh my God, I sent out this email, it didn't have links in it. I posted a social post, with a typo in the line, or, I was speaking and I totally forgot what I was going to say. And I'm always so relieved by it. And not only by the actual thing that they have it happen to them, but that they're able to share it and able to say, you know what, I'm human. And being human is being authentic, right? We're all going to make a mistake at some point. And for the love of God, we have to forgive ourselves, and we have to have grace and non-judgment for each other when it happens, because in the greater scheme of things, it's this little tiny thing, compared to all the awesome stuff that women are making happen in their lives, whether it's as a mom or in work, corporate, or by yourself. I'm going to say one more thing. I think for those of us who work home alone, it's really hard because you're looking at yourself, and if you don't know how to get up and stretch and move and go get a cup of coffee or a breath of air or contact that friend, it's just you and your perfection paralysis, or your imposter syndrome, and you have to get through it. And I think that's hard also, with those voices in your head.
Oh, and it's a spiral, and you hold yourself back and you hold yourself back, and then you don't do the thing. So you say, well, I didn't do the thing, so I must not be as good as I think I am. And I totally agree. You said something about authenticity, and I totally agree. Actually, I think we should do an episode on authenticity, but authenticity to me equals vulnerability, and that equals connection. That equals connection. So no matter what you're doing, human connection has never been more important. So the more people see your authenticity, the more they're going to connect with you. And that to me stepping into that has completely catapulted my career. Stepping out of the perfection and stepping out of an environment where the perfection was expected and into an environment where authenticity is rewarded has been a complete game changer for me. So I love it. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about, should we do some calls to action?
Sure.
Okay.
I actually love what you just said about when you step out of perfection, you can step into authenticity. And I think, if we can label something and walk around and saying, how about this? Well, first, let's change what we're saying. Let's say I'm having an imposter moment, right? Or let's
Feeling. Yep.
that imposter
Yep.
feeling. I'm having that imposter feeling again. So let's first take the syndrome out of it. And the next thing that I wanted to say was, if you can label it, it's happening. And if you know it's happening, you can change that thought.
Right.
And produce a different feeling.
Yep.
It may take a few minutes. You may have to find what is it that you need to do. Do you have to step away and read a book, meditate, go for a walk, whatever it is? Find the things that can help you step out of that.
Totally agree. So we have number one, change the vocabulary, change how you're saying it. You say syndrome and you go, right? You say feeling and you're like, oh, feeling. Okay, I can handle that. 2, remember feelings are not facts. I think that's what you said. That's what I was hearing. And then 3, so we either have phone a friend or recall. I would say what you said is figure out what works best for you in that kind of environment and do that. Could be both, could be, phone a friend isn't as good for me because my friends, they would just, be like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? So for me, it's recall. It's visualizing, visualizing a time when I nailed it, because that serotonin and that brain pathing, that also helps to just get me in the right mental state. So 1, 2, 3.
There you go.
I love it. All right. You want to do a bye girl bye?
Well, let's just first say that, where can people find you?
Oh, thank you, Beth.
Yeah.
So people can find me at nancymadoff.com or nancymadoff@nancymadoff.com or on Instagram or on LinkedIn. I am not on TikTok. I will never be on TikTok. It will completely ruin my life if I get on that platform because I won't be able to stop. How about you, Beth?
So TikTok is a guilty pleasure for me because my daughters send me TikToks. We send them. So literally every day I'm like, okay, I can't have TikTok time until I do X, Y, and Z. It's actually good for me. But I am not on there either. I am laughing at other things, not me. But so I can be found at that'saspade.com and Beth Knaus at that'saspade.com. I too am on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And did I miss something there? I got it all.
I don't think so.
I'm not on TikTok.
We're not getting on TikTok.
We are not. All right. Now
all right.
Bye, girl. Bye.
Bye, girl. Bye.